Welcome to this episode of the Justice Team podcast on the Justice Team Network. And today we're talking about a very important issue, and that is immigration, where it's going, where it's going after post-election 2024, and also the criminal justice system, what we've seen the past 4 years, where it's going 2025. And we have two esteemed guests on. One is Ms. Cynthia Santiago.
Thank you.
And we also have Mr. R.J.
Dreiling.
Dreiling.
Yeah.
I fucked this up last time when we
I
talked.
don't think you did.
Okay, so we have R.J. Dreiling, who's an esteemed criminal defense lawyer. We all work together on various cases. I think all of us have worked together.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, because in our specialties, we're filming live here from Justice HQ in Torrance, and we all use these spaces. We work together. But, I think a lot of people have a lot of fear.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of folks that we represent, a lot of consumers that we represent have a lot of fear, right?
Right.
So do you want to alleviate those fears, or do you want to talk about
Yeah,
it?
so definitely we saw the fear build up right before elections, and then right after this stream of calls have come in. I've also been doing other lives where I'm just trying to make the public aware, the undocumented public aware, that the most important thing to do right now is to figure out where their immigration status is. Like, where do they stand in this list of priorities? And we don't know what these priorities are going to be, but we have an idea from the previous administrations that it's going to, where you're going to stand if you have crimes, if you've been previously deported, if you have a petition pending, if you have family abroad, where the individual will need to look for a plan A, plan B, and if there is no recourse, what's the emergency plan if they're picked up and detained and deported? Who's going to watch their kids?
Wow.
Yeah, we have a lot of mixed status families. So right now, the best advice I can give folks is to figure out with an immigration attorney where they stand in their immigration case.
But how do they do that? They just reach out. I'm sure you're getting flooded with calls right now.
Yeah, we're definitely getting calls, but a lot of the nonprofits in different states are also activating plans to have clinics, to have Know Your Rights events. I've already been invited to a couple Know Your Rights events. I'm trying to use social media to get information out to people as quickly as possible about their immigration situation. Those that have something pending also want to make sure that they can, that they're going to be okay with their petition, that their petition is still going to be available for them.
Yeah. So, and I know you've actually been in the border years past, helping folks.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a sense of practical advice for people that are watching or listening that may have an immigration issue coming up. Like, what should they be doing right now?
Right, talking to their attorneys. They should be, if they've had a criminal history or an immigration history, they need to get their records and pull up those records so that an attorney can assess where they're going to be in the priority list. People that are abroad, I think that simply having the name and information of an attorney that is ready to step in. Unfortunately, the talk with this administration is that they're going to try to set up tents and camps and have court done at the border.
Wow.
In makeshift, encampments to hold families. And it's going to be something that's going to require a lot of attorneys to just get out there to the borders and to be ready to represent people.
Yeah, and when you're doing that, I mean, let's be honest, Cynthia, you're not getting paid to do that. That's a passion project. You're down there.
Yeah, definitely. Any of the border work we've done, I've always teamed up with the nonprofits and the organizations, and it just go because of the years of experience and my work in the community. It's part of what I represent, helping people in the community as much as possible. At the same time, also being a mom that sustains her family and, trying to do better things for our local communities and support other projects.
And I'll just say, I've been working pretty closely with Cynthia now for the last year and a half. And, she's not just one of the best immigration attorneys, but she's one of the best attorneys. And I will note that what she sees and what I see sometimes, because I help her a lot on the crossover with criminal, is that sometimes there's a hesitancy to call a lawyer because there's a concern that some red flags might go up if you do some stuff. And there's worry that, ICE might show up at your door. And one of the things I've learned from Cynthia is that there is a very clear process where we can take a look at your case and poke around without arousing any suspicions. So it's always better to talk with an immigration lawyer rather than just kind of sitting waiting to see if anything happens.
Yeah, I mean, do you have predictability around that kind of stuff? Like if you're looking at somebody's file, it's like you're probably more of a higher likelihood that they're coming.
Typically we're pulling files from 20 years ago. The FOIA request, for example, takes 9 months to a year to get a complete file. I do all my requests with all the information from my office, so I'm getting all the correspondence. And they're not, if ICE wanted to get somebody and they were looking for somebody that is high on their priority list, they have social media, they look for their taxes, they look for other ways to track a person down, the credit reports. So what we do is I normally try to keep it very local within my office, and then we go back to the client and let them know this is what we found.
Yeah, and the nice thing, so the way California law used to be, as far as there's always issues in criminal law with whether or not someone who has immigration issues, whether or not they were properly advised and knew what the deal they were taking was going to have immigration consequences. And the standard kind of line by the court for many years was you could be deported, or you could not get your citizenship, or be denied reentry. But what the courts have changed and said now that advisement by itself is not sufficient in terms of advising someone of their immigration issues. And the way the law is written right now is very strict in terms of you really have, the person who was advised or took the deal really had to know that deportation was imminent based on the charge they're taking. So what we've had a lot of luck with is, and when we go back and pull these cases, we see transcripts for the judge, where the judge says, yeah, you could be deported, and that's not sufficient. Or we see notes from an attorney, where the attorney says, I told him to talk to an immigration attorney, which is not sufficient. It's actually,
or no notes at all about that.
yes. So even though someone might think their case is old, or there's no issues with the case because they did it, doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't an avenue of relief for.
Because you're also doing post conviction stuff, right? Working together to help people be like remedied that have already been convicted from years ago.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I will say that I've told you guys on the way in here, that's been one of the most rewarding parts of my job thus far is because people kind of just throw their hands up oftentimes and just think, well, I had this conviction back when, and there's just no hope. But one of the nice things about this kind of work is that usually the equities are in our favor in terms of when we go to the prosecutor, we have the legal argument, but then we say, there's been no arrests since then. They've lived in this country for 30 years. They're married. They have kids. They have a job. And usually you can get a prosecutor who at least will listen to you. And very oftentimes, if it's just kind of an inconsequential case, they'll just let it go, which we've had happen more than a few times. So like I said, again, just because the situation might feel hopeless, or you think it's old, or you think you did it, doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a way for us to kind of help you out.
Right. And the person definitely has either gone to jail, they've served their time, they've served their sentence, they've completed what was asked of them. But we also recognize that our criminal justice system is not the same as it was, 20 years ago, where things like having a no license or multiple no licenses were very penalized.
Yeah, I remember one of the first cases, this was back when I was a DA, back in 2008, one of the first cases I had was a married couple got into an argument about the paint on the walls. And I think the wife, they were in their 70s, the wife slapped the husband. And we filed on the wife, and that probably wouldn't happen today. But to Cynthia's point, it was a really heavy hand for a long time. And so when we go to these prosecutors, and when the conviction was 20 years ago, they're not looking through it the same lens that they did 20 years ago. They're more, generally speaking, more open to the fact that people make mistakes. Jail isn't always the answer. So we've had a lot of success with kind of reframing the argument and showing them that that this person deserves a second chance, which ultimately is what our argument is let's give them a break.
Right. And then by doing that, by going back and reopening a case and getting the post-conviction granted, then the person may become eligible to become a resident or a citizen. They probably were a resident, and now they can't, they couldn't become a citizen for so long because of that. And that really then opens up the avenue to our immigration system. Now we're actually helping provide more people with status that, that really do, they did something or did not do something, but that, the circumstances are a lot different now.
And now, RJ, you said this is the most rewarding stuff, the things that you and Cynthia are doing now in your career. Obviously, again, things that they don't pay well, if at all. A lot of the, this is right. I mean, let's be real
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, sure.
So like how, if you're giving advice to, because people when they come out of law school, they're altruistic, they want to change the world, they get caught up in other stuff, right? But the both of you now have had success in your career just by helping people and being altruistic and having been paid back. What advice would you give to people if you're looking at law students or young lawyers right now? How can they help? How can they help with what you guys are doing, even if just a little bit?
Start.
I mean, I definitely started my career with doing a lot of community events, going to churches, going to schools. Schools usually have parent meetings where they have a parent group and or a teacher that might say, you know what, I'll get all the parents together. I did a lot of events as well as community centers. And I would go in with knowledge or with an older attorney that knew, experienced attorney that knew more of the complicated cases. And we would just offer, like, let's do a chat to tell people about their rights, basic rights. What happens if ICE shows up to your house? Do you have the right to not open the door? Do you have the right to not sign any documents? Do you have the right to fight your case and go to court and see a judge? So we'd go with the most basic framework of what is your legal right. And then we would also offer consultations. We'd offer free in-person consultations at that setting. Just whatever it took for you to be a benefit to the community without the community having to, look for somebody and go out and find attorneys. You would be there for them. And that's how I felt like was the most effective way.
Yeah, I would agree. So, I was a little at first hesitant just to get into immigration issues, just because I didn't really have much experience with it. But, it's a high consequence area of law for these folks. So, I'll never forget the first case Cynthia sent to me was a guy who was on probation for a DUI, and all we needed to do was terminate probation early by a year, which for a prosecutor and a judge is really not that big a deal. But for him to maintain his status, we had to get
huge
that.
deal.
And so I remember walking to court, and he was there with his wife and kids. And you're walking, and they're looking at you like, "Are you the guy that's going to keep my dad from getting deported?" And that's heavy. So thank God it was a judge and commissioner in airport who granted the motion, and he was just obviously the family was thrilled. But I'll say that it's the high consequence is also what makes it rewarding. So some people can kind of have an aversion to that, but I would just say, to Cynthia's point, get involved in that stuff because.
Well, can't they reach out to the two of you? I mean, couldn't you create an army of people just willing to donate their time to help and just show them the X's and O's?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we have an opportunity, especially right now, where people are open and willing, and they're trying to prepare themselves with the rights, with the knowledge of what the rights are. And so I think this is an opportunity to get out there, and even if you don't have experience in that area, go through some training, and it's the basic fundamentals. What does a person have the right to? They have the right to see a judge. They have a right to fight their case, not voluntarily deport themselves, which is what happened a lot in the past.
Well, explain that to us. Voluntarily deporting yourself.
Right. We definitely have seen it with legal permanent residents. Sometimes legal permanent residents are detained when they're coming back into the country. And during previous administrations, they were basically advised by the ICE officer that if they shouldn't fight their case, they should just sign and release their residency. And people were afraid. We had this during the Muslim ban. They were being given this advice by an ICE officer, and then people were so afraid that they would just sign off on renouncing their rights to see a judge to fight their case. With people who are undocumented, really, if you have not had contact with immigration in the past and you've lived in the country for 10 years, for example, and you have children that are minors, there is a way to fight your deportation in court with the judge. Show the judge your history, show the judge your children's medical situations, their school situation. And these were reliefs that people were not aware of. People don't know about this. And they would go to an ICE detention center, and ICE would tell them, you're going to be stuck here for a very long time. It's going to take a long time to see the judge. You should just sign, and then you can figure it out when you get to your home country. Your family can just petition for you or something. they made it seem very simple, like I'm trying to help you, and it would end up costing the person, what is the argument there? What evidence am I going to be able to show that this ICE officer advised them when they shouldn't have? So we always the fundamentals, like don't sign, try to see the judge, say I want to fight my case, and then your family has a lot more room.
And just for people watching, listening, immigration is federal.
Yes.
This is federal court, right?
Yes.
We're talking about some state court issues you're doing with the crime.
Yes.
In California.
California. But it's federal, so like Cynthia can help nationwide if people reach out. It's a federal situation.
Yeah, I have clients all over the U.S. Social media really has boosted my profile through different places. Like I had clients in Ohio. I've never even been to Ohio, but I love that I can help individuals that are in spaces where they don't have access to attorneys that are experienced or knowledgeable, or maybe they've already been burned by an attorney in the past. And I come in and I'm able to look at the history and say, you know what, you can apply through your military family member. You can apply through this process. And it's just really great that we have this access to be able to help people in different places where there's not a lot of attorneys.
Yeah. How about for folks that say they've been, in the country, they're not documented, but they've been here for 20 years, no legal troubles. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have a family, maybe they don't. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking like a lot of folks that have, household help. Those folks never been in trouble, never had any. What should they be doing? Because they have a lot of fear right now.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely do a lot of consultations where there's just nobody to petition the person. There's no avenue to be petitioned on your own unless you've, sometimes been a victim of a crime, or unless you've been a victim of abuse, labor abuse. So there's individuals that have maybe no way to, if even knowing that you have no way to fix status protects you from an unscrupulous notario, which is usually like a paralegal that tries to practice law when they're not supposed to, or an unscrupulous attorney where the person is told, do this petition, I'll get you a work permit in a few months, and then unknowingly the person is now going to see an immigration judge. So there are situations where even knowing that you don't have relief will protect you from getting taken advantage of.
Yeah, so for folks that have never petitioned, never had any legal issues or things like, should they just chill?
I mean, they just need to, I guess at this point, just try to stay low profile. I mean, unfortunately, we're waiting till January 20th. I anticipate they're going to have a lot of executive orders ready to get signed through, and then we'll just have to see what the situation looks like, who's going to be top priority. Last administration, they had the Muslim ban, and so then that was a very, very busy time. We were at airports. We were trying to reach as many people coming in and advise them as to what they could do. But this go around, they've had many years to prepare, and we don't know. We really don't know what else.
I tell everybody, if you see an immigration lawyer, give him a hug. It's going to be 4 years of a ride of hell, right?
Yeah. But then that's another point that we were talking about earlier, is that, if somebody has a criminal issue, even if it's like a no license issue or a misdemeanor, that they should seek an attorney, a criminal attorney, to step in first. And a criminal attorney will go into court for that person without them having to appear in a court, because they have been talking about going back to courts to pick up people from court, from their hearings, having an attorney represent them, and that way they don't have to go to the court. And also just advise them as to any immigration consequences, because if a person does get put into custody, then what we saw before was that a lot of authorities work with ICE, and then they'll transfer them over to ICE. California seems like we're kind of doing much more work to protect folks from that, from court, from transfers, but there's people all over the U.S. Yes. So if you're a criminal defense attorney in another state, really reaching the immigrant and undocumented community is important right now too, because it's good to be there for people before this becomes a bigger issue. But R.J. does that a lot in our cases too. He steps in.
Yeah, it's important to make sure if you're a person with concerned about your immigration status, to get a good attorney right at the outset, because even the small thing that you might think is no big deal can have immigration consequences down the line. And you want to make sure not just that you have an attorney, but you have someone who has an open line of communication with an immigration attorney while the case is pending, because a lot of defense attorneys out there sometimes think they're getting a great deal for their client, but it's something that can have pretty significant immigration consequences. So you really want to make sure that you're talking with someone if you are arrested that has an open line of communication with an immigration attorney, because you want to tread carefully. And to the same point, it's when you're on my end trying to bargain the case, a lot of times you got to know some prosecutors will respond very well to immigration issues and some will not.
Yeah.
So you want an attorney who knows the courtroom and knows who they're talking to, because sometimes something
has that
like
rapport with that other person just in case.
yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes we talk about immigration issues, but sometimes we talk about the job and we talk about work, depending on who we're talking to. And that can make that first approach makes a big difference. So
That's why it's so dependent for criminal lawyers, especially because you have to know the landscape. You got to know the DA, the judge, the local, like local for criminal. It's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. Relationships.
Yeah, you got to speak their love language. Some prosecutors will respond very well to certain, and some judges will respond very well to certain things, and some things they will not. So
do you find that ICE and like all these things, do you think that if they're lawyered up, do you think that they just go after the low hanging fruit of people that aren't going to fight back more than if they have an attorney?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The offices are directed usually to go after folks that are their case has been denied in court, for example. And most folks that if their case was denied in court, there's numbers that show that if you have not been represented, your case is more likely to be denied in court, in immigration court. And so they'll go after folks that are not represented because their case was denied, and they don't know that they have an appeals process. And then once you don't have an appeal filed, that's it. You've lost your ability to fight in the U.S. unless you can come up with a stay or you can come up with a motion to reopen. But they're definitely looking for folks that are not represented, that don't know what else they can do with their rights. I've had ICE officers, people contact me that they said ICE officer was like, I don't care. The person was unrepresented. You're gonna come here and show up with your ticket and your bags, and you're gonna be deported, and just giving people really horrible advice when they shouldn't be. They should say you need to go talk to an attorney. And so they're not willing to do that. And when we step in and we go in, it's a completely different attitude and it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, if anybody's watching or listening or knows someone's going through it, I will reach out to me. I will personally pay for your lawyer in immigration, because it's a barrier for a lot of people. Feel like I don't have the money to be able to do that. There's some nonprofits that help. It's not enough though, right? Because it's just not. So a lot of lawyers that don't do anybody. You could step up and help in a lot of ways, right? You can, if it's not boots on the ground, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's putting them in the right position to succeed, or sometimes just being their personal counsel to cause a lot of shitstorm to make to get people afraid because they have a lawyer, lawyer.
Yeah, they definitely will look at the person's immigration history, and if they see that they were not represented in their initial proceedings, and now they don't have an appeal pending, then they really will run with that and tell the person it's just sign. You can figure it out later, and that's the ultimate issue we end up having is when somebody signs and they're out of the country. It is very difficult to bring them back. I've done it in some cases, but it's like it's a very hard standard. You'd have to be able to show the waivers. You have to be able to show why the person was not informed properly, why the person waited so many years to do something. And unfortunately, people don't speak to an attorney till 5-10 years later.
What's your biggest fear for 2025 on? What's the worst thing that could happen?
Well, look,
other than taking away due process, because that's what they'll try. They'll try, but that's in the Constitution, right?
I will say this, and I've said it already here, but I'm so grateful for the work that Cynthia has given me. And I will say that once you meet folks in person that are dealing with these issues, it's hard to come to grips with what they're looking at. And there's so many people suffering a lot of just the anxiety, whether or not they're going to be deported, but walking around every day wondering, are they coming? And they have kids and they have jobs. And it's sad. So, I don't know how it's going to go down. I hope it's not as bad as we think it's going to be. but we'll see,
What's your worst fear, Cynthia? What's the worst
Oh my
executive order
gosh.
that
No,
Stephen
I mean,
Miller can write?
I represent a lot of victims of crimes, a lot of people that cooperated with authorities and reported a crime, and individuals that don't have criminal history and don't have deep immigration histories. But even if they did, they were victims of a crime and they survived these crimes and they reported it. And my biggest fear is that they will try to attack the system that is already in place. It's the U visa. It's a visa for 27 crimes that the person was experienced. The person, one of the 27 crimes, and they cooperated with authorities. And this was something that Congress passed many, many years ago, over 20 years ago, that allows for these people to get legal status. And my fear is that they're going to go after people that have already been victimized, that have already been through such traumatic events, and then they're going to try to, rehash all that by putting them into some type of a proceedings or denying more cases and whatnot. So that's what I fear. I fear there's so many communities or asylum seekers that are leaving their country, fleeing for very, very traumatic situations, and they're putting them through such terror and horror. That's what I fear.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll hopefully end on like a positive note here.
Yes, please.
I do. If you're watching or listening, if you're in the legal system, I think you could be empowered, because I really do think that change happens from the courtroom, the stuff that y'all are doing backwards, more so than anybody could do in the legislature, because they move at a snail's pace. They go to horse trade. You're making change for an individual one at a time, and for you, one to many, right? So I think that's how we could feel hopeful, is having that mindset that we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, obviously the legal work is difficult, but in terms of anyone's ability to assist on any case, sometimes it's as simple as getting some letters in order from friends and family and summarizing it for the court. It's not like if you were to offer to help, you have to go walk into federal court on day one and argue an asylum case. But certainly if anyone wants to help out, I mean, Cynthia would be the first place I would go. And, it's really, like I said earlier, it's extremely rewarding work. So I would encourage, if you're interested, to you can either reach out to her or reach out to me, and we'll
How do they find you? That's
Sure. Well, I'm here at Justice HQ Torrance quite a bit, but I am R.J. Dreiling from Dreiling Law APC. It's DREILING lawapc.com. You can reach out to me on phone or email there.
Instagram.
On Instagram too,
go on.
under Dreiling Law, I believe. So
I think that for me, I'm hopeful that people will step up and we will be able to mobilize those that are undocumented into knowing that they have rights. And we'll be able to mobilize that through, as I said, like Know Your Rights, through our social media information that we provide, just being able to inform a community, and the community also empowers themselves through their own strength and resilience. And so I think that's what I'm hopeful, that it'll wake up our community as a whole. We'll build together and we'll fight as long as we can, because there's also term limits and things like that. So we definitely
for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Executive order number 1, I'll be the president forever.
But yeah, I think that sometimes, and I tell my folks that reach out to me, it's like I tell sometimes people feel like you have to be in the position where you're like, there's nowhere else to go but to fight back, and that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And how do they find you social media?
Abogada Santiago, ABOGADA. I go by Abogada Santiago.
And on TV? On TV? What time?
No, I on TV, but it's on a local channel, nationwide channel. Sorry, it's different.
A local nationwide channel.
Yeah, it's a nationwide channel. It's a nationwide broadcasting, but it's on like local, like you'll be like 57.1 or something. I don't know, but social media is probably the best way, or Facebook.
And Planet Fun Bob for me, as you probably know. But yeah, we work together with everybody. But I want to thank the two of you for doing like the real work that lawyers do, that we dream of when we're in law school, to actually help individuals and get that rewarding feeling that you guys are talking about by actually like saving and changing these people's lives. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice Team podcast on the Justice Team Network. Reach out to us at justicesteam.org justicesteamnetwork.com with any questions. I'd be happy to make introductions to these two if you really screwed up either of their names in social media like I did. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.